podcast. My guest today on the First Time Story broadcast is Matt Jaskol. Oh, I screwed it up because I didn't think of
Rascal
Jaskol.
Jaskol.
Yeah, Rascal Jaskol. Matt Jaskol. He is a pro skydiver, an ex Red Bull athlete, a pro race car driver, and racing instructor. I need to get together with you. And on top of that, he is a small business owner, and it's going to be awesome. And Matt is here to tell us the story of his first time on the show Castaway and going without food and shelter. So this is going to be fun. All right, Matt, welcome to the show.
Hey, thanks for having me on.
Well, let's step back to how did you find yourself even interested in a going show Castaway? And actually tell us a little bit more about the show since some people might not even know what it's about.
Yeah, so a couple years ago, a show called Castaways aired on ABC. And of course, like many things, nobody really understood what it was going to be about. Of course, naturally, everybody just thought it was going to be Survivor, some kind of competition show. And it actually ended up being a social experiment. It was something that had never, ever been done before. It was extremely emotional. It was very real. There was no competition. There was no game. The creator of the show created a loan on History Channel, along with some other stuff. So he was a very, very well-known producer, really amazing guy, and the whole purpose of the show was to try to create something real that had never been done. Like I said, they wanted to create the real life version of the TV show Lost. For those that remember the TV show Lost, let's try to find interesting individuals that all have a unique struggle in life that you wouldn't realize they might have. It was kind of dark. It was actually kind of dark for ABC. ABC even openly discussed how this was down a road they have never traveled because it was a little bit dark in the sense of they took people that had real life problems, from being on the street to addiction to mental illness, to PTSD, you name it. They took a lot of interesting individuals and let's strip them of everything. Let's take away their food. Let's take away shelter. Let's not give them any information. Let's literally almost create an environment as if they were on a plane or a boat and it wrecked and now they're out in the jungle trying to survive. But let's flash back to their lives at home and document how these human beings change. And that's what they did.
All right. Well, I don't think I ever watched that show. That
Yeah.
sounds incredible. So then you touch on a few things that has me quite curious. Because you said people, I apologize, I'm going to say it that way, but you said people with issues. So
Yeah.
what issue were you, when you applied to be on the show, what issue what did you want to address or were you bringing forward?
Okay, so to back up and answer your kind of a first question you hinted to, why did I go on this show? So funny thing, I did not apply for this. And when you asked if I was interested, in fact, when I was reached out about it, my answer was no, but hell no. Stop calling me. That was literally how I was actually kind of upset about it. They caught me at a wrong time. And here's what happened. And of course, it's because of my life leading up to that moment that even got me involved, which would take a whole nother story to explain my racing background. But to try to make a long story long, a guy that's known me since I was, 10 years old in motorsports, ever since I was a go-kart racer. Let's just say it was his daughter-in-law of sorts, is a Hollywood producer, casting agent. So she, I guess when ABC did the roundtable meeting, before anybody even knew the show was going to be happening, this was all just in the preliminary stages, they were trying to cast for the show and trying to figure out how they would cast for it. And I guess, I've learned things about production that I never knew. I guess when they do a TV show like this, or they come up with an idea of the type of people they might want for that show, whether it's a scripted show or non-scripted. And they wanted this person, that person. And something what brought up, I guess, was we want an extreme athlete or race car driver. That, of course, all these shows always want a race car driver. And so she goes, oh, well, I know this guy, it's my boyfriend or fiance's father. He's involved in motorsports. I'll give him a call. So she reached out to him and said, hey, I'm casting for a TV show. I need some people. Who do you suggest? And the only name he mentioned was mine. He goes, well, I know this kid. I've known him since he was, I know this guy, 35 years old now. He goes, I know that I've known him since he was a kid. He was a Red Bull athlete. He's a skydiver. He hangs out with Travis Pastrana. He does a lot of crazy stuff. I would consider calling him. So he actually reached out to me first and I blew him off. I was busy. And then she reached out to me on the phone. And when she told me about it, I was kind of listening and she goes, there's XYZ, blah, blah, blah. But it does involve surviving on a deserted jungle island for up to 2 months without food or shelter. And I was like, yeah, you got the wrong guy. Thanks for calling.
No interest in that. No interest in venturing into the unknown, pushing yourself and embracing this challenge.
I was like, lady, if I have a long month, I might go get a pedicure. You got the wrong dude, like I'm not living I've been through some hardcore stuff. I'm not living in the jungle without food or shelter. You got the wrong guy. But she didn't know all the struggles I had in life. She just knew that I had a little bit of an interesting story. And so I'll be very, very open and honest. At that very moment when she called, I was dealing with a mentally ill mother who was in and out of mental hospitals. And it was one of the worst, most unbelievable experiences I could ever explain. She was suffering from like a mental breakdown of sorts, of like bipolar disorder and depression. And I had her, and we sadly in Las Vegas, of all places, we actually have some of the worst mental health care in the entire country right here in Las Vegas, as I come to find out, as I come to learn directly from the doctors telling me this, and so multiple different, mental hospitals trying to get my mom even diagnosed and treated. And I was literally dealing with that as this woman's calling me about going on a TV show.
Yeah, I'm sorry. Yeah, that's some crappy timing there. And thank you for sharing that. And sorry you went through that.
No, it's okay. Things are, a lot better now. But during that time, and again, this was only less than 3 years ago. And so she was just over 2 years ago. So, also, and then at that time, I was dealing with a father who had more recently recovered from open heart surgery. And it wasn't planned, heart attack, open heart surgery, wasn't expected to live. I left my career at the Las Vegas Motor Speedway as the chief instructor of a racing school called Dream Racing, and took over his business because we were going to go bankrupt. I had a brother who was basically on the street, older brother. And so I had a lot going on, like you see in a movie, and I told this lady in a rude way, even because I just wasn't in a good place. And I was like, you got the wrong guy. I just don't have the time for this nonsense. And, I'd appreciate it if you just stopped calling me. And that's kind of how I treated her. And little did I know that just made her pursue me even more. You're like, oh, this is exactly the kind of guy that we want for this show. So that's the
person who doesn't want to be on. That's exactly who's perfect for this. That's
what they want.
So you did end up on the show. So what happened? How did she convince you?
In an emotional way. One of the times I happened to be sitting in the parking lot of one of the mental hospitals, and I had been blowing her off. I had been pushing. They kept asking for things like, I needed to fill this out. I needed to go through the vetting process. I needed to do this and do that. And I was just busy. I was running my father's business. I was working 20 hours a day. I was going to take care of my mom. I mean, I look back and I don't even know how I was able to do some of the things I did, and at the same time, I have this woman calling me about a TV show, and, I've had a lot of letdowns in my life too, so even if it was, potentially something I could make money on it, I was just like, whatever, it's a bunch of BS, this isn't going to go anywhere. I just don't have time for that. Call me when it's for real. And so
then you're pursuing me, but yet you're asking me to do all this red tape stuff. It's like, dude, no, right. You can't have it that way.
That's exactly. And I kept saying, listen, you need to give me details. And she wouldn't. It was very vague and cryptic and, and weird and secretive. And I was like, get out of here, And so I was like, exactly. I had that same attitude. And then she, because I like I said, I kept blowing them off. And then she kept, hounding me, and she calls me and she goes, hey, we need this, we need that, and I snapped at her. I snapped and said, listen, I'm busy. You don't get it. All right. Like I got other more important things going on. I don't have time for this, and she knew how to play me. And I'm glad she did, in the sense of she knew how to poke at my ego. She was like, yeah, maybe this isn't the right time. maybe you're not the right guy. You're not even chosen. You're just on a short list, and I was like, the competitor in me was just like, oh yeah, show me the short list.
Who's
how
better
short is
than
this
me?
list? And she was like, and then she just kind of got in my head a little bit. She said, it sounds like maybe this is bad timing in your life, but if you do consider it, it could change your life. And it sounds like maybe you need to do something for you and look out for your own life. She just knew how to get under my skin a little bit, and it did, and it worked. I went home and reflected on exactly what she said. And then I started moving forward and started filling out, the vetting process, and started
which
going.
is which is kind of funny. It's like, you need to do something extremely miserable for yourself.
She was like, she was
Be
like
good to
full.
yourself.
She was a like, remember, it was like Matrix. She was like the Morpheus of Matrix. She was like, I'm not telling you I'm gonna like, you want the blue pill or the red pill, but just be prepared. This is what like, you could be going down a dark road, but hey, you should try it.
Okay, so you went home, you reflected, your ego's at play, and you're like, okay, I'm gonna do this. You start jumping through the hoops they put you through,
Yeah.
and then what happens?
So okay, so then I kind of followed through, and I was like, listen, first off, I'll do it, but my parents are going to say no. They rely on me. I take care of the family. I pay the bills. I run the business. My mom's in a hospital. My father's recovering from a heart attack. The business won't survive without me. It'll go bankrupt. And I was like, there's no way my parents are going to be okay with me disappearing in a jungle for possibly 2 months. Things will fall apart. Like, I just can't do it. But I'll still go and ask them. So I go to my father first, actually, and I go, hey, by the way, and at this point they told me it was ABC. So now it's real. It's not just some like pilot show possibility. It's like, oh, it's one of the biggest networks in the world. I was like, okay, this is probably going to happen. This isn't just some small little thing. And so I go to my dad and I go, hey, here's what's going on. I've been asked to be on a TV show, but it involves me being cut off from the world and disappearing, completely unreachable for possibly 2 months. And I'm just waiting for him to say like, well, yeah, I can't have you do that. And my dad just kind of like drops his face and he looks at me and he goes, oh man, I think you might need to do this. And I was like, oh, okay. It made my stomach drop. I was like, oh, I didn't expect that. And then I guess I was looking for an out. I was looking for an excuse. Of course. I was terrified about living in a jungle, but I was like, I was chicken. I was scared. I was looking for an excuse to be like, oh, my parents said they just can't have me leave. They can't deal with it. So I go to the person that will for sure, she'll say no. She can barely, she gets anxiety and freaks out if I leave town for a weekend with her, at the time with her mental condition. And I was like, there's no way I can leave and go into a jungle. And so I go to my mom and I say, hey mom, this is what's going on. I've been asked to be, blah, blah, blah. I tell her the same story and she goes, oh man. She goes, I don't want to be the reason that you lose out on something that could potentially be a big thing in your life. And I think maybe you should do this. And I just kind of sank down. I think I was sitting on the floor and I was like, oh, all right then. Maybe maybe I go do this, So
Wow,
yeah,
that's
so
fascinating.
it was really wild. And then that's when I said, okay, I'll do this. But I had no idea what was going to happen. And then the sequence of events that happened, on the way to the island and to the jungle, I mean, was pretty surreal. Even though it was a TV show on ABC, if I told you every detail of the way of how it happened and how it went down, you almost wouldn't even believe it. It was a trip, to say the least.
So one, I want to acknowledge you have incredible parents, and that's great that they're even in the dire situation that things are in, like they're putting you first and your dreams and what you want to embrace, and the opportunities are there for you. So that's awesome. And two, I want to acknowledge you for realizing like, oh, I want an excuse out of this, and okay, because you could still, I mean, some people would still turn around and perhaps even lied about it, so that, hey, it just doesn't work with my parent, you face the situation head on. So that's awesome.
Thanks.
So how much time was there between you saying yes and then you getting on the plane and heading off?
It was a few months. So it was in the year 2017. So March, and it happened, I mean, relatively quick if you think about it. So in March 2017, they call me and reach out to me. By June, I think. So March, April, May. Yeah. So like in June, it was in June was like, okay, we're doing this. And then late June, almost right into July, they go, okay, it's on, it's game on, get ready. You're going to be heading off to somewhere in the middle of nowhere. We're not going to tell you where by September, and be ready. But what happened, remember when I said they wanted to flash back to your life at home? So now they tell me, okay, a camera crew is going to be headed to your home and is going to live with you for the next 4 weeks and follow your life every day, 12 hours a day, and document everything. And even I'm like, I live a pretty ridiculous life, like there's no way they're going to follow me for everything. Oh yeah, we're following you everywhere. And so sure enough, they show up to my home, and they're in my office, they're in my house. I even had this pretty amazing opportunity because of some amazing friends I have. I got to go to a skydiving event in Madras, Oregon during the solar eclipse. And myself and a group of some of my best friends, we did a skydive during the totality of the solar eclipse, which was one of the most, not even, you can't even explain.
Super surreal. Yeah.
And they filmed, and so listen to this. So when the solar eclipse happened, it was the largest mass human migration in recorded American history. There was 2.5 million people that went to the tiny area of Madras, Oregon, because that was where the totality was going to be the longest in America, like 2 minutes, right? And we organized through a skydiving company, through a group, to skydive. There was only 21 people able to be in the plane, and we skydived during the totality of the eclipse. And I mean, you couldn't get a motorhome within 1,000. You couldn't even rent a motorhome in Las Vegas to drive to Oregon. It was insane. There was no, rent, housing, was thousands of dollars per night. So the ABC, the producers, are like, oh yeah, we're going to follow you to that. We're going to film that. And I go, no, you guys don't understand. You can't go. And they go, well, why? What do you mean? I was like, it's the solar eclipse. It's been booked out for 6 months. It's like it's biggest deal. And they go, we're coming. And I was like, okay, sure, whatever you say. And that's when actually things sank in how real it was. They went and spent tens of thousands of dollars to follow me to film it. And when they pulled it off, I realized, oh wow, this isn't a joke. They're pretty serious about this.
This is for real. Yeah.
And the footage they took was amazing. It got nominated for Emmys during the show because some of the footage that ended up making it on TV from the eclipse. So anyways, yeah. So they filmed my life for 4 weeks or so, and then things started happening really fast. And where it got a little bit scary, and I'm even asking my attorney, like, is this normal? Is this supposed to happen? They asked me to relinquish my passport. They said, here, we need you to send in your passport, turn it into us. What are you talking? Sure about? And I asked my attorney, I was like, is this normal? Is that okay? And he goes, yeah, man. And even my attorney, he's been around a pretty long time. He's a motorsports attorney, and he's done a lot of stuff in Hollywood. And he actually was one of the very first attorneys to ever see one of the first contracts of Survivor. He went through contract number 1 for a client, and he's done a few others since. And he says, hey Matt, you're about to go down buckle up, son. You're about to go for a ride. Like he even knew before I did. Like, yeah, man, you're in for a ride, buddy. Hang on. And so I sent in my passport, and the reason why, kind of cool, is they took it because the visa was inside of it. The visa was going to be inside, and the exit date technically was going to be in the visa, and they never wanted you to see that. So, and I never knew that. So come September, I think it was like September 21st or something like that. I'm pretty sure that was the day. I knew all the flights were booked. Everything was ready. I get a knock on the door on September 21st. I knew somebody was coming, but I opened the door, and it's this guy named Robbie from ABC. And he goes, hi, Matt, I'm here to escort you to Indonesia. Let's go. So I had a handler to escort me to make sure that, I got there, and I didn't ever see and now I look back, I'm like, oh, hey, can I have my passport? And he was like, no, I'll hang on to it.
Yeah.
I was like, wow, it was wild, right?
Wow.
And then yeah, go ahead.
Sorry, I'm just wondering. So in that time frame, June to September, what's your head game? Like, what's going on? Do you feel like you need to do something to prepare?
Yeah. I'm super A-type personality, so I'm like, they don't give you any information. So I'm just like watching YouTube videos, anywhere from how to boil water to how to make a fireplace or how to make my own motel in the middle of a jungle. Like I'm watching every YouTube video. I'm calling every special forces military friend I know. And I mean, I'm just trying to figure out everything, like literally, like I said, from making a shelter to how do I wipe my butt in the jungle. Like I'm just trying to do any research I can, because I'm getting nervous. I'm like, and then just the competition sense of the competitor in me just wanted to go. I had no intention on finishing. I had no intention on making it to the end. I actually had even promised my family that I wouldn't make it to the end, that I just wanted to experience the journey, and I wanted to see what it was. I wanted to see how I would
Okay.
handle, yeah.
Did you know you were lying when you said that? Because you
No,
don't seem like the kind of guy that would quit and be like, oh, well, okay, this is a good experience, I'm going to stop.
no,
And
you
I'll
know
see it
what? And
through.
that's where it gets I get emotional, because I truly didn't think I would make it. I even had told my mother, my family, I told production, I said, guys, please, I hope you don't get mad at me. You guys got the wrong guy. I'm not going to, I told them to their, I'm going to quit, is what I told them. I'm not a quitter, but I told them this, that my body means more to me than a game, than a show. I was like, I will not let my body become emaciated. I will not go home to my family sick or with the disease and sit in a hospital for a show. I won't do it. I'm doing this because I'm going down that rabbit hole and I want to see what it's all about, but I'm going to put my health and myself first. And meanwhile, I was lying to myself. I absolutely was. Production saw something in me that I didn't see in myself. And God, it was so emotional, and I'll circle back to that later, but they looked at me and they just said, sure, Matt, whatever you say, like, yeah, it's your journey, whatever you want to do. And they, cause I didn't want them to be mad at me if I said, okay, I'm tapping out, get me out of here. So, okay. So we get on an air. So like during that time, I'm training the best I can. I'm trying to put on weight. I'm very, very fit, very lean. I'm pretty small. And even my doctor and my, friends that, doctor friends that I work with, they're like, hey man, if you're going to go do some kind of starvation island thing, you're going to have to put on some weight or you're not going to make it,
Yeah.
and that was hard for me because I don't like to eat poorly, and I'm so active. The only way for me to put on weight is to eat a fairly unhealthy diet. So I was eating really unhealthy foods, just a lot of fats and sugars and anything I could get my hands on to try to put on a little bit of weight to help the survival process being out there in the jungle. So there you go. That was my preparation, was eating unhealthy and training. And
So I'm just curious, because you said you were watching all these videos. Were you like going out and trying? Like, did you go out and build a shelter? Did you
I
like?
actually bought some raw, like I ordered them like online or something. I got coconuts so I could figure out how to shuck a coconut and figure out how to crack one open in my backyard. I do remember doing that. I bought full regular coconuts like off of a tree, and then YouTube, and then watched how to like break one open, because I know they're really, if anybody's watched Tom Hanks, on Castaway, and sure, little did we know the show would be called Castaways, it's a real bitch trying to open up a coconut. So I was worried about that, knowing that might be my only food source. So I did practice opening a coconut, and thank God I did, because I survived. If it wasn't for coconuts, I wouldn't have survived, and I had to open a lot of them, and if I didn't have any idea how to do that from watching a little bit of YouTube videos, I would have been in a lot of trouble.
Oh man, YouTube to the rescue.
Yeah. I don't know what I would have done without YouTube, actually. Yeah.
All right. So you land to the location.
Yeah.
What happens?
So this was a scary journey. It went, I'll tell you. So we went to a place called Sorong, Indonesia. And we joked, we're like, it's so wrong. That's how you said it. It was so wrong. And that's where we were it was a third world country, part of the same landmass as Papua New Guinea. I mean, I didn't know, I'm not great with geography. I had to look it's near, like in the New Zealand, Australian hemisphere of the ocean. It's like northeast of Australia, New Zealand, out in the middle of the ocean, part of the same landmass as Papua New Guinea. And we were like on the coast, and so it took 3 plus days to get there. I had to go from San Francisco to Taipei to Jakarta to another place to another place, names I couldn't even pronounce. Then we got to Sorong, Indonesia, and it was a tiny little third world town, and it, like, again, out of a movie almost. They put me into a car by myself, and they drive us down this like dirt road, third world, buggies and dirt bikes cruising around. And we pull up to a fairly decent, nice hotel, like you can tell it's the nicest hotel in the area, and almost like a little Motel 6 of sorts, but it was clean and nice. And so we pull up to this place.
Are the cameras rolling through all of this?
No. This
Okay.
is all, nothing's happening. This is just
Okay.
all like getting ready. And we pull up and there's other cast members. And so you never knew any other cast members. You didn't know any other human beings. You didn't know who else was going to be out there. You didn't know how many were going to be there. And so you have no idea, in my mind, I figured it out. I was, pretty wise in the sense of like, okay, it's a show. It's going to be 10 to 15 people. So I figured that much. It ended up being 12. And so anyways, I'm sitting in a car and they go, okay, you got to sit here for a minute. It's hot. There's no air conditioning in the car. It's like 95 degrees. And I'm just like, and I'm pretty calm. I've been through a lot of crazy stuff. I'm just like, yeah, man, whatever. I'm not freaking out at all. And I guess I find out other cast members were getting very anxious and anxiety, and I'm chill. I'm relaxed. I'm just along for the journey at this point, And the scary part hasn't begun, in my opinion.
Yeah,
so I'm just like, what?
if you can't sit in a hot car by yourself,
I was like, keep me in the car as long as you want. I'm okay right now. So I come to find out there's other cast members being moved around the hotel, and this woman, the woman that actually cast me for it, she goes, all right, you got two options. You sit here for I don't know how long, or you let us put a bag over your head and we'll get you inside and get you up to your room. And I was like, yeah, sure, whatever. So
Tag me.
they like out of a movie, they put like a black shirt over my head, walk me through the hotel and up to my room, so I didn't have to wait to get it checked into my room and stuff. So, and then this is where things got a little crazy. We got sequestered to our rooms for 3 days. And it wasn't supposed to be that long. It's because they were trying to get ready. I mean, this was one of the biggest productions ABC had ever done. So we come to find out, biggest reality show ABC had ever done. I don't know the exact number, but I know it was in the tens of millions, I'm sure, from time of start to end of production. I mean, it was a massive production, 150 crew people, boat, yachts, out in the ocean. I mean, it was pretty epic, thing they were creating and putting on with a lot of moving parts. So we're in the hotel with the intent of getting on boats and then boating us out about 4 hours out into the middle of the ocean where there's a string of deserted islands. It wasn't just one island. So people have such misconceptions like, oh, were you all together? Was it like Survivor?
Yeah.
Were you on one island? We were spread. To give you a vast idea of how big the project was, we were spread across 5 islands, 17 miles from the furthest human being at one area to the other furthest human being at the end, with people scattered in between. They purposely knew not everybody would ever meet. That was the intention, was that, I mean, that just to give you the idea of the game board, as they called it, was in 17 miles from one end to the next, as far as like, if you had to hike it and swim it. I mean, you had to swim across channels of water a mile long if you wanted to get to another island with potentially other people. That's how crazy this was. And,
but was that a thing, wanting to link up with other people?
Yeah,
like,
you know what?
That wouldn't even like cross my mind.
You know what? Yeah, that's something you learn. And that was a whole nother journey in your mind, was to realize that you can't survive alone. 100%. It's not possible to survive out there by yourself at all.
Interesting.
You might make it really far, but it's something that was pretty amazing. Again, it gets emotional, but if you want to go fast, go alone. If you want to go far, go with others. And there's nothing more true than being stripped of everything and being alone in a jungle to realize that you can't make it by yourself. And not to spoil it for anybody that didn't watch the show a couple years ago, but nobody that was alone made it to the end, plain and simple. Nor would it have been possible. So so in the beginning, I didn't want to find anybody, but to tell you, because again, I know it's so intricate and so complex, but we're in our hotel rooms, sequestered for days. Finally, I think they were trying to figure out how to move everybody. They had to take each individual one at a time. They drove us to a dock. The dock put us on a dinghy boat. The dinghy boat boated us out into the harbor onto this big dive boat. Then they walked you onto the dive boat, locked you away in your little cabin of the boat so that you never met or saw another human being. To this day, there's human beings that were out there with me on this journey, and I never met them. I've connected with them on social media, some of them, but I've never been able to meet some of these other human beings, which is actually a little bit upsetting, even to this day. ABC never did like reunion
or
never did a reunion or anything
together,
like that. Yeah. too big of a network, unfortunately. If it would have been in hindsight, it probably would have done better on a channel like History or Discovery, a little bit smaller network, a little bit more intimate. But it was on such a massive conglomerate network that, they didn't really care, And so anyway, so finally on October, or, it was actually the day before October 1st, we boated out into the ocean. That's when my heart started pounding. I actually, I did a video because they confiscated all your electronics. They confiscated your phone and your belongings before we got on the boat. And I hid, I mean, it was dirty what I did, but I hid my iPad in my backpack. So they took my phone, but didn't know I had my iPad. So I had my iPad purposely for two reasons. So I could watch videos all the way up until I went out in the jungle. Like, just how do I crab in a shell? How do I make a fire? Like, I literally wanted to, I didn't sleep a wink. And and for my friends and family, I did a video on my iPad, and I had to talk very quietly because I knew there was other I knew there was other cast members, and the like 4:30 in the morning, I'm awake, and we still don't know how or what's going to happen. Are they going to boat me up to a shore and say, okay, have a nice day? Like, you still didn't know what was going to happen. That's how crazy it was. And finally, early in the morning, I think it was like 7 a.m, somebody knocks on my cabin door, and they literally slide it open. And they go, are you ready to start your journey? And I was like, yeah, I've been ready. And they go, okay, we're going to bring you your final meal. I'm like, oh God. Okay. so
did they ask you what you wanted?
No, they just brought me breakfast, and they said, here's your final breakfast. They brought me some food, and I ate it. And then they came back and said, okay, sorry, you're going to have to wait for a while, but your drop is going to be about 10 o'clock in the morning. And I was like, oh, okay, whatever you say. And so about 10:30 or whatever, they knock on the door again, they slide it open. They go, are you ready? And I'm just like, no, no, but let's do this. And so, and you were only allowed what was on your body. So they even told you, like, you can layer up, like you can put on a jacket and a hat. You can put 3 or 4 layers of clothing on and be like the Marshmallow Man. You can do whatever you want, but you can only have what's on your body. And oh my God, I I already have like decision-making incapabilities at times and OCD. I brought 3 different pair of shoes in my suitcase that they let me bring on the cabin so that I could like decide all my final clothing. Right. So like I had all my clothes that I traveled with. I stayed awake most of the night and hardly slept. And then the morning that I woke up, I had 3 different pair of shoes to decide from, and I put each one of them on 15 times and panicked because I was like, this could be make or break me out here is my shoe decision, So finally went with I was like, all right, these are the shoes I'm going to go with. And the number it did on your mind, at least for me, was pretty rough. And so I walk outside, and now it's my first time seeing where we are. And it's not Tom Hanks' Castaway, Fiji. It's deep, scary, dense jungle. There's mangroves, there's no beaches. It's like rock and jungle. It's steep. It's not pretty necessarily. And I was just kind of like, oh, okay, this is not what I envisioned, And they walk me onto a little dinghy boat, and there to greet me is the creator of the show. He's like the dad. He's like the boss of the show, the showrunner. And there was the vice president of legal from ABC, like the legal department, which was a pretty big deal. She was there. And then the boat driver and like a drone captain to like fly a drone. So there's only like 2 or 3 people on the boat, and they go, and they're all kind of smiling, almost sinister, like, just like, here it is. Are you ready? And I was like, yeah, I guess so. And so we get on the boat and we start boating out, and he explains to me, he goes, okay, here's what we're going to do. We're going to stop short of the shore, and you're going to get out of the boat. And we're going to point and tell you you're going to know your area. It ended up being like this abandoned guard tower that had been, we ended up finding found a fishing area that had been abandoned for about 15 years. It was like an old traveling fishing area where people did trade. There was old pearl farms. And so there was out in the water, about 50 yards from shore, was this old rickety tower. They called it Tetanus Tower later on as a joke. And it was out in the middle of the water, and it was an old guard tower from a pearl farm. And I found this out, way later after the show was over. And so we stop in the middle of the water. The creator of the show points at my tower, and he goes, all right, Matt, that's you out there. This is it. This is where you get out. And I look, and I'm a triathlete. I've been doing triathlons for about 10 years. I swim a lot. I know distance. And I looked at it and I go, that's almost a half a mile. And he looks at me, he goes, That's exactly, yeah, it's about exactly about a half a mile. And I was like, I'm wearing boots and full clothing and long sleeve shirts. Can we get a little closer? He looks at me and goes, no, you'll be fine. So the show started with me swimming nearly a half a mile in the middle of the ocean to get to my shelter, and that's how it
And
all,
yeah, and starting out with all wet gear.
and that's how it started. Yeah, they kicked everybody out of a boat, different distances, and said, that's your area, go swim to shore. And that's how it started.
Man,
Yeah.
so we could talk for hours.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
how long did you end up being out there?
It ended up being 41 days
41 days.
until rescue came.
And so that's 41 days. How are they filming you? So do you feel like somebody's still near you or
Yeah, and this is where it gets complicated and emotional and the things you go through, because people don't realize it was frustrating. You got very defensive. It made you angry when people were like, "Oh, but you weren't alone. There's people out there." There was so this is wild, right? We're out in the middle of the jungle. Production was not living anywhere near us. There was no safety. There was no paramedics. There was nothing near you. They lived, later on we found out they were living on massive like military style boats, not even really pretty yacht. There was one boat that was pretty nice that ended up being like the main crew boat, but the other ones were almost like US Coast Guard type boats. That again, how big the production was. They had boats. They had three at once because there was about 150 crew people. And as the show dwindled down over the course of almost 2 months, crews started leaving. They needed less and less people. Some people quit. Some people got fired. Some people got malaria. It wasn't a joke. It was the real deal out there. There was a production woman that got malaria and ended up in a hospital for weeks. It was wild. These production people were going through their own journey. They just had beds and some food. That's the only difference between, them and us. They were going through their own struggle just the same, cut off from the world, cut off from their family, no cell phone services, it was wild. So they're living on boats from where I was in my particular location. They were 2-3 miles away from me. And they explained to you very clearly before the game began that you can die out here. Be careful how you move, because they kind of told you, like, if you move at night and you get hurt, injured, killed, bit by something, we're probably just going to recover your body in the morning. There's really not a lot. That almost made me want to quit right there. I was like, whoa, I didn't realize it was going to be like this, So you were alone far more than you had anybody with you. And when you did have somebody with you, they weren't allowed to speak to you. You weren't allowed to communicate. So I try to explain to people, you were more alone than if you were completely alone, you can deal with that. You're like, this is it. I have no other option. But when you have another human being every day looking at you and you're not allowed to communicate with him, that can drive you a little bit
harder.
That's way harder. This guy knows things.
Because you have to exercise discipline of not talking to them, and discipline is something like you need all the discipline in the world just to survive.
And it was bad. And there was times like
that stress and pressure.
Yeah, and you would try to talk to him. You would say, like, I tried to communicate with him times. My one camera guy that I was with for 8 days, and he looked at me one time. And he was kind of mean. He was like, "Hey, man, stop talking to me. I'm not allowed to talk to you. I'm here to preserve your experience. Please stop talking to me." And I was just like, "Okay, copy that." You just realize, like, this is not a joke. This is pretty it's cool now that you look back on it, what they created, because they were doing that for us. They were doing that to try to make it as real as possible, but still be able to document what was going on. So I only had one camera guy, and he would have a helper most of the time, like an Indonesian helper that would have a kayak, since I was like living out in the water essentially. And a lot of times I would never see him. They shot with big lenses that he would set up for the morning, like down the beach, so he could just watch me and observe. He wasn't like in my face a lot of the times. He was just kind of off in the distance. There was, after a long time, you didn't really realize he was even there. The only time they would ever communicate with you was just like, "Hey, are you going to make any big movements today? Are you going to try to go look for other people today?" And a lot of times I didn't have the answer. They just wanted to know ahead of time. So that was the only communication you had. Like, if you were going to go on if you were going to like leave your place and go hike for 5 miles to try to find other humans, they just wanted you to look at the camera guy and say, "Hey, I'm going to go look for people in 10 minutes," just so they could get ready to follow you. That was about all you had. That was about all the communication you were allowed.
So what was the experience like to not have shelter, to be cold, to be in the element, and to be hungry?
Again, it's so hard to explain all that. And I'm sorry. I know it takes forever, and it's so complex. And there's so, like you said, we could talk for hours, but you definitely go through a lot of things, right? And if I could try to sum up in the effort of saving time, some of the biggest lessons that I learned was, and it's easy to say it, right? How many people say, oh, everybody's going through a struggle in life, treat people as if you just met them on the worst day of their life, because you don't know what people are going through. It's easy to say those things, but until you truly experience it, like starvation. I mean, I genuinely started to starve on day 30, 31. I started having signs of kidney failure on day 31. And that's when you get emotional. You just realize that, I was laying in the dark at times, completely, utterly alone. No, I didn't know if any human beings were around. I have no communication with the outside world, and I didn't have food. I hardly had anything at all. And you have nothing but your mind. And sometimes it was dark. Sometimes I would cry because of good experiences. There was no way of escaping your mind, so you had to learn to be okay with yourself. You didn't, it's funny how your mind does it, and everybody kind of experienced the same thing. You just couldn't escape it. Your mind just starts basically auditing everything you've ever done in your life, every relationship you've ever had, professional, intimate, friendships, the way you behave. You start to really understand what's important in life when you have nothing. And it's sad, because so many people will never ever understand, even though they think they understand. Unless you truly go through something like that, you'll never really understand. And something I learned was how your environment, how the world that we live in directly affects your physical health, not just your mental health, right? So, and what I mean by that, if you're in a bad relationship, and that could be work, that could be your personal private relationship, your intimate relationship, that could be anything in life. If it's not a good situation, it physically will lessen your life. And the reason why you might not notice it is because you have distractions. You have your cell phone, you have food, you have alcohol, you have activities, you have friends. So you have something that's slowly eating away at your life that's not healthy, but you fill it with distractions, But if you let all of those distractions disappear, if you were stripped of all of them and all you had was that relationship, how would it affect you? And it was sad, and it was scary realization. I was alone for 8 days in the journey. And finally on day 8, I started failing. I started going downhill. And I was like, oh, wow, I can't survive alone. Another real emotional thing that I learned, and I never even processed this thought until I was out there, was the difference between being alone and being lonely, and how people don't realize the difference, and again, it's one thing to say it, but it's another to experience it, to know that I was completely alone and I was happy.
Yeah.
I was happy being alone and learning about myself, and just the quiet, and nobody calling me, no worries. I mean, I was worried about my family at home, but I had this weird thing of like, too bad, they have to deal with it. I'm not. We've all made this decision for me to disappear, and this is where we are. And it was amazing not having my cell phone. It was actually funny to hear people be like, oh, Matt, you're not going to last 5 minutes without your phone. You're on your phone 24 hours a day. That doesn't mean I want to be. That's just what the world requires of me, So to not have my phone was the most amazing thing. And people didn't realize, people thought I was going to be the opposite. I didn't have my phone. I couldn't help anybody. I'm always the one that people are calling to ask me for help and take care of this problem and fix this issue. You couldn't reach me. I was alone, and I loved it. And it wasn't until I started failing that I was like, oh, I need other people to survive. I went and found other people, and they weren't great people. They were two guys that were in it for the wrong reasons, in my opinion, in the beginning, and sat and
So what did you mean by you started failing though? Because I keep listening to you, and I keep thinking like, I would not have gone out looking for people.
Yeah. Well,
like, I mean, because I've taken trips where I've gone like a couple of weeks, and like, I don't think I've spoken a word in 2 weeks.
right.
And like, that doesn't bother me. So I'm like, what did you feel you needed others for? The companionship, or because at this
No.
point, is it to find food? Is it to find shelter?
Yeah,
Is
it
it
was.
like
It
you
was
think
literally
like one mind is better than, two minds better than one?
So here was the thing. So I was living on this tower out in the water, right? every day to look for food or resources. I had to swim through about neck. So if the tide was high, it was above my head. And then as I got closer to shore, it was about neck level, then waist deep. So, and the tide would change, but it was never any less than about neck deep. So I had to go through that water every day, like I said, up to at least 25 yards or something like that. Maybe it was only 50 feet, but it was, like in the photos, you'll see it's pretty decent distance that you had to tread water or swim. And I had to do that back and forth multiple times a day. The safest and only option to sleep was to be on this tower out in the middle of the water. There was nowhere for me to really sleep in the jungle without getting murdered by bugs and animals and things. And it wasn't safe, and I didn't have resources or even the capability to build a shelter of any. So the best option was this shelter in the water, but now you're burning an insane amount of energy. So now I'm trying to find firewood. I'm trying to start fire. I'm trying to catch fish. I'm trying to process fish. I'm trying to catch clams. I'm trying to get coconuts. You can't do everything on your own. It's 95 degrees. We're literally on the equator. The heat index, if the heat index goes 1 to 10, we were at a 12. It was literally, the heat index was off the scale. They would tell us, like before we started. So the sun would burn more than, I live in Vegas, obviously. And it was a different type of intense sunlight, you couldn't.
And then in the jungle, you're not in the sun, but the canopy just traps the heat, and it's even worse.
Yeah. So yeah, even if you could find shade, it was, bugs and there wasn't much shade because you were exposed. The dense jungle wasn't a place that you could really survive in. You had to be right outside the jungle on the the skirt of the water. So yeah, that was where when I say failing, you couldn't make all the movements and stay alive. It wasn't possible to gather water, try to boil water, try to get a fire going, try to go catch the food, try to go get the firewood, try to process the firewood, try to keep a fire going. It wasn't possible. Part of what production did, again, because they had to create something, right? They scattered little bits of resources. They knew that we're not survivalists. So they tried to create, and they did such a beautiful job. They truly did find, it took them 6 months to scout an area. They found an area that was abandoned, that had trash and had resources. I found fishing line and fishing hooks that production didn't leave out there. Those were items that were just scattered in this devastated area.
Yeah, because those islands were inhabited at some point in time.
Yeah, it was almost like a trade. Imagine like an old trade area, back in the day. So this was like an old fishing area, and it was, again, that's a whole nother story. You could have done a whole show about the ecological system and how devastated that was a wake-up call of just how bad the planet is and things. And the show has nothing to do with that. I've never been an environmentalist, and I don't consider myself one, but that was a wake-up call to see the devastation of the trash and the death and everything. So anyways, it was a decimated area. It was a decimated, clammed out, fished out area that's why it had been abandoned. So there was a lot of abandoned resources out there. There was abandoned shelters. There was abandoned wells in the ground that had some fresh water. But production scattered things, right? And everybody got like something different. I found a tiny little teacup that was tin so that I could boil water. And I found some waterproof matches. Waterproof matches don't last very long, but other people might have found some lighters and things like that. So that's what I mean. Like about day 8, I was running out of waterproof matches. I was getting weak. I wasn't eating,
So how did you link up with those 2 other dudes?
I hiked and swam for 4.5 miles. Took me half the day. And I literally walked up. And as I'm walking, Anne, I tell you this, as I'm walking, I'm hiking. It's day 8. I think I'm starving, but I'm not. I'm just really, really, really hungry. I just haven't eaten I haven't eaten a meal in nearly 8 days. I caught 1 fish. I found 1 clam. I had a tiny roll of Oreos, 8 Oreos that I found in a bag. So I was rationing 1 Oreo a day. So like extremely limited. I'm burning 3,500 calories a day, and I'm ingesting about 300 calories a day. So we were going into, you were losing over a half a pound of body weight each day. It was serious, and that affects your body, obviously. So I was feeling weak and dizzy all the time after day 8. And I was getting scared. I was like, okay, if I stay out here, I'm going to go home, so I need to find help. And so I start hiking, and I'm hiking for hours, and I'm seeing nothing. And I'm like, maybe
Are
there's
you
no.
yelling? Are you
Oh yeah, are you kidding me? I'm like, hello, and I'm looking at my camera guy that's following in the distance, and then your mind starts playing tricks on you. Then I mean, I was literally like, no, I can't be out here alone. There's got to be other people. And then I was really upset because I was like, I went the wrong way. All the people must be that way, and I clearly went the wrong way. I was like, there's nothing out here, like. And it wasn't until, like I said, 4.5 hours later that I walk up, and how I knew I was. And again, I mean, it's still a show, but it was pretty surreal. As I'm hiking down the beach, along the ocean, along this island, way off in the distance, I finally saw a camera guy, and I was like, okay, there must be people down there finally after hours, and so now I'm like on a mission. I'm just like staring. I'm lightheaded. I'm weak, and I'm just on a mission, staring down this beach, and I'm talking to myself. I'm like, just keep going. Just keep going. Don't stop. Just keep moving. You're going to be okay. And so I get there and I find these other two guys, and it was upsetting, to say the least. These two men looked me square in the face, and you could read it on their faces clear as day. Oh shit. They were not happy to see me. They were like,
man,
another stomach, another person. They had settled in for 8 days. They hadn't seen, they found a really cool, they hit the jackpot. They found a shelter. They found their bags. They found, and just a little side note, it's important to note, before you started the show, you were allowed to pack a small international TSA approved bag, smaller than a regular carry-on. So it's pretty small carry-on, and you could pack whatever you wanted, but it couldn't be, it had to be anything that it couldn't even be a pocket knife. It had to clear a TSA checkpoint to get on an airplane. So all it could be was clothing and obscure survival items. Like maybe you were smart enough to pack floss that you could use as fishing line potentially. Like you could pack obscure items, but it had to be true to your life. You couldn't pack a bag full of candy bars and protein bars. You could pack some food, like they wanted you to pack true to your life. Are you an athlete? Are you a fisherman? Like, what would you pack if you were going on an island vacation? And if you didn't pack true to your life, they were going to strip it out of your bag. It went to, there were military special forces on this program that, that were out there and stuff. So you were allowed to pack a bag like you're going on an island vacation. But the catch was there's no guarantee you're going to get your bag. So everybody gets a bag so that you have some resources, and they wanted you to learn about the person that you found the bag. They made you journal for weeks before the show started purposely so that if you found somebody else's bag and you never got to meet that human being, you would kind of read their journal and learn about that human being and understand what maybe their journey was being out there. It was pretty emotional and intricate what they created. So I never found my bag, of course. I found the backpack of a young kid who didn't intend to stay on the show, and he packed a bunch of dirty clothes and there was hardly anything in it. I got super unlucky. Production thought I was going to, when production knew that was my bag, they were like, oh man, Jaskol's going to quit. Oh no, this is bad. He got the worst bag on the game. So these other two dudes that I found, they got lucky. The one that there was 3 of them at once. And the one guy quit on day 2. That ended up being the kid of the bag that I found. And so the other 2 guys, they found each other's bags. So, and they had a 3rd bag from the guy that quit. I know it's complicated, right? But so when I found them, they found a shelter. They found like this hut. The hut had some like rice, had like a can of food. It had some light. It was like the jackpot. It had like some fresh water in the ground that you could boil water. They found like a little, they hit the pot, they settled in, and they were ready for the game, meaning they were ready to get to the end.
Hang on now.
Yeah.
So you walk up to this dude's.
Yep.
You realize they don't want you there. You see their setup.
Mm-hmm.
What the hell are you thinking?
You want to know what I physically did? I swear to God, true story, not a word of a lie. I'm walking down like this, and they were up into the jungle a little bit, like in this cleared area right off the shore. And I look up at them just like this, and they looked at me like, hey man, how you doing? And I knew within seconds. I'm very good with the energy. Like I know these things. I looked right away, and they weren't like, oh man, whoa, cool, another human. They were just like, oh man, okay, here we go. They weren't hoping to find another person. You know what I'm saying? And I don't blame them. You can't get mad at them. They found stuff. They settled in. They had resources, and now they were in it for the long haul. Now they were like, okay, we're good. We're good to go. We're gonna make it to the end. they were very competent survivalists too. They were like hunters. They lived out in the wood. One guy was from Ithaca, New York. One was from Sequim, Washington. One was a hunter. One was a fisherman. These were the dudes, you know, like these guys are going to make it to the end. And then here comes City Slicker, race car driver boy, walking up, and I'm like, hey, I have no food and I don't really know how to survive in a jungle. Will you help me? I mean, I don't blame them. I might tell me to leave too, you know? So anyways, to answer your question, I looked at them, I saw they didn't want me, and I physically did this. I looked down at where I came from. I had never turned around a single time. I was so worried that I was going to like collapse or pass out that I was just staring down the beach walking for hours. And I literally turned and looked back because I knew they didn't want me. And I looked back and I was like, well, I'm screwed. I can't make it all the way back to my shelter. So I guess I just need to try to make it work with these guys. What pursued ended up being one of the worst and emotional experiences of my life, you know, and I'm grateful for every second of it. But it was real. You know, I survived in a jungle with two guys that didn't necessarily want me there. And if I tell you this, even production people that were there, they said they were sick. Some people didn't want to film us. They said, this is like Hunger Games meets Lord of the Flies at times is what it was like. And the dark side of things, I mean, I'm being so honest and real. The dark side of things, the things that crossed your mind were extremely dark. And I don't even want to tell you the things that crossed your mind.
Well, I can actually only imagine.
I'm sure you can. And
you're in survival mode. I mean, it's, you know, it's do or die. It's, you have the opportunity to quit at any time, but sometimes reality goes away, and your reality is the suffrage that you feel. And
that made you, and people again don't realize that what made you suffer even worse was that you had a choice, and that haunted you. Not every day, not every hour, every freaking minute after day 20, when you're literally starving to death, you battled. I'm talking by the minute, 60 seconds looking at your clock. Why am I doing this? Well, I can just quit. That people will never realize how much harder it was to stay out there, because all you had to do was stand up and say, hey, I'm done. That's it. It was as simple as that. It would have been easier if it was true real life and we were stranded, because you wouldn't have a choice. You would just have to survive or not survive. The fact that you had a choice to quit made it so much more emotional and so much harder, because not only are you trying to survive and struggle, but now you have an internal struggle every minute of whether or not to quit. And that was, man, that was tough. That was beyond words. I can't even explain what that was like.
Man, I mean, I've never experienced anything close to that, but I know. So I went through boot camp in OCS for the Marine Corps. When I was at OCS, I was going through, like, I had injuries, and the commanding officer wanted me to quit, and he was doing everything in his power to get me to quit. And to know, like, you have the option to quit. People around you want you to quit, and you're like, no, I'm not quitting. And, you know, it's like you're fighting everything else against. Everything's against you. You're fighting yourself, and you're like, I'm not doing it. I'm not quitting, and I'm going to do it my way on top of it. So you actually,
you know what? You actually know more than most. There was a couple of Navy SEALs out there at the end that explained to us they were like, hey, you should be proud of yourselves. What you guys went through out here, people that we've gone to war with wouldn't have chosen to suffer like you guys have. It was very similar to what you just said. The only difference, believe it or not, was you had a little bit of food. You know, like that was literally, you went through the same similar thing of the mental torture of, like, you know, trying to find a why bigger than a how. You know, if you had a how, you weren't going to survive. If you were worried about how to survive, you weren't going to make it. You had a why much bigger than a how. You know, and that's what makes you survive.
So what was your why, Matt?
Yeah, that's an emotional one. It might sound more simple, but it is obviously a little bit more complex, but I just didn't want to fail. You know, I didn't want to fail. I didn't want to quit. That's all there was to it. And in the beginning, I said I was going to quit because I didn't want to emaciate my body. And believe it or not, these two men that made it very difficult for me are a primary reason I stayed. Was I didn't want their actions to dictate whether I quit. just like you didn't want that drill sergeant to dictate whether or not you quit. You know, I didn't want these guys to be the reason I failed. And it bothered me. And then it's funny, the reason my why changed I had a why of why I was going to stay until week 2. After 2 weeks in, I had a different why. And then when I started physically failing, when I started having, health issues, then when I started being told that I could potentially get pulled off the show for malnutrition, when I had a Navy SEAL medic doctor look at me and say, you got a couple days to live, and then I'm going to have to get you out of here, like you're not going to survive the way you are right now. That was the most emotional thing I'd ever gone through. And what's really funny is there's no mirrors in the jungle. You can't look in the mirror and see how bad you look to be able to say, oh, this isn't good, I need to go.
I look like I'm dead.
Yeah, it was already too late. I had already crossed that bridge. I'd already crossed that line a long time ago. And now when I turned around and looked at that line that I drew for myself and I'd already passed it, now I can't go home. And then where I broke down emotionally was I couldn't go home to my family completely destroyed. And all they're going to care about is, did you finish? Did you make it to the end? Being a race car driver, since being a motorsports athlete, being a driver since I was 5 years old when I started racing. I started racing before I even have much memory. I was racing before I even I don't even have memory of some of the races that I first started. That's how long I've been doing it. It's just who I am. It doesn't matter if you win. You just have to finish. You have to cross the finish line. And that got so emotional for me because I got to a point where I was like, I just have to finish this. And I got to a point where I begged the producer who threatened to take me off the show because of my health. I begged him. I was crying. He came out and saw me on day 31 and told me like, hey man, you're not doing so good. We might have to take you out of here. And I told him, I said, you're going to have to take me out of here on a stretcher because you're not going to let me, I'm not going to quit. I said, I can't have come this far to not see the finish line. I said, it's just not going to happen. And production was emotional. They were emotional for me because you're watching human beings change. Who I was on day 1 and day 8 and day 15 wasn't the person I was right there on day 31. I had completely changed. My means, my reasons, my whys, everything had changed. And I wasn't ready to leave. I wasn't gonna go off the show.
So were those 2 guys still there too?
Yeah. Oh yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
So
and if it wasn't for them, I wouldn't have made it. I wouldn't have made it to the end as hard as it could have been easier, but they did help me stay alive, and it was actually 2 other human beings that I found that changed everything. I swam across nearly 1.5 miles of water 3 different times to be with, and that's where it gets really emotional. Was I was willing to yes, you're on a TV show and they tell you we won't let you die, but there's a very real chance of dying. I swam alone across 1.5 miles of infested waters of sharks and jellyfish and to go be in a happier place. I was willing to figuratively and real actual life risk my life. I was willing to risk my time on the show and being pulled off and physically risk my life just to go be happier. And that's where I try to explain that you don't realize how important being happy and being around the right people and having the right whys in your life affect everything in your life. I was willing to risk my life, not because there was food. There was no more calories across this 1.5 miles of water than there was where I was sitting. It was just a better environment. It was just a happier place. It was just 2 other human beings that these other guys weren't terrible human beings. They just weren't my human beings. They weren't the guys I was meant to be with, and there was 2 other human beings on the other side of this ocean that were the people I was meant to be with. And guess what? I survived to the end with these other human beings, with essentially no extra calories, no extra resources. I was just happier. I was just happier being where I was in it. And because of that, I was physically doing better because I wasn't scared. I wasn't stressed. I wasn't angry. I was just happy that I was just in a better place, and it physically helped my body. It 100%, my physical place of who I was with directly physically affected my body of where and how I would have finished. And again, that was a huge emotional awakening to realize, like,
Yeah, I
wow,
mean,
you
that
know,
is seriously intense.
it
Like
was.
it's sure.
Yeah.
Like, I mean, I understand it on a intellectual level, right? But I mean, you're describing on such an emotional, intense level of having a drive towards greater odds of death just to change your environment. I mean, there's some people that don't, I mean, that's what's crazy. I mean, there's some people that don't even change their environment in
They
the
won't even
best
change
of
they won't even
conditions.
change their job. They won't even,
Yeah, and they're
they'll be in it.
miserable,
Yeah.
and
Yeah.
you're you're swimming across an ocean
Yeah.
for essentially to die, and there's no guarantee you're going to find
Yep.
other, human beings. Now, were you psyched out? Because as you're telling this, I'm like, why is Matt the only solo guy traveling around?
Oh,
Is
no,
that
no, no.
okay?
No. So this is what I mean when I say it's complicated, Dan. So I found these two human beings on day 8. Okay. On day 18, things were not going well with these guys. When I showed up, I told them I was a badass athlete. I'm a triathlete. And what we all agreed on was that there was human beings on another island that could be better. There could be the Taj Mahal over there in our minds. There could be better resources. There could be animals to hunt. There could be more food. It looks like a better island. I mean, everything looks better on the other side of the septic tank, always, like, and so we're on this side of the septic tank, and on that side, it might be really great. It might not stink so bad. But it was just another rough island also, but we could tell there was other human beings over there. Part of my sacrifice to these men for helping me stay alive for days was to swim to this other island to see who and what was there and report back. And I know your eyes open up, because if I didn't go swim, I don't know how much longer these guys would have helped me. They were like, you said you could do this. You told us 10 days ago you could make that swim would be easy. And then we would fight, because I was like, well, yeah, it'd be easy when I'm not starving on day 18 in a jungle, if I'm fed and healthy. Yeah. But right now, that's not going to be so easy. So again, to make an insanely long story long, I decided to swim across this ocean, and I almost didn't make it. I got swept up by the current that almost took me out in the middle of the ocean. Production thought I wasn't going to make it. They almost swooped in to save me. I made it to this baby island first, and then hopped over to the other island. And I eventually made it to the other island to find 2 other human beings. And I found my tribe. I found my vibe. I proceeded for multiple days to stay. I slept in their shelter for 2 days. They fed me.
When they saw you, let's back up. So you walk up on them and they first see you. How did you know they were your people? Like, how did they look at you?
Like I said, just a totally different vibe, a different energy. They were excited. Well, actually, I shouldn't say they. There was only one. There was a guy named Robbie who was nearly 400 pounds. And yeah, he was about 385 pounds when I met him. And his journey, obviously, out there was he dealt with addiction, with addiction, not just obesity. He has genuine addiction. And so I see this big 385 pound dude, and again, how I talk about how emotional and connected it was. For 18 days, or for at least 10 for me, 18 for these other guys, they had a bag. The bag had a journal in it. The journal was from a girl named Kenzie, who was this country music singer in Nashville, Tennessee, who they had decided, there's no way this girl's still alive. Look at this. She's just a, skinny, scrawny, singer, makeup all over her face. There's no way she's still alive. And listen, they were judging, and I didn't disagree with them necessarily, but in my mind, I genuinely said to them, I think even on camera, I was like, I don't know, man, you never know, guys. You just never know. And so they had conceived like, there's just no way she's alive. And I was like, you just never know. And So we had her journal and some of her I was wearing her sandals. I had these pink flip-flops, thank God, that I got to wear every day so I could walk around easily, since all I had was my big boots, my big hiking boots that were wet. They weren't safe to wear all the time. So at least if I just wanted to walk around the jungle, go pee or whatever, I could wear these pink sandals that they had in Kenzie's bag that they let me have. And so I find this big guy, Robbie. The first questions I ask him, I go, is Kenzie here? And he goes, yeah, man. I was almost in tears. He goes, Kenzie's over here. And I was like, oh my God. I was trying to scream across the ocean to yell at the other guys and be like, Kenzie's here. Kenzie's alive. And it was surreal. It was just crazy what we were going through, what we were experiencing. And meanwhile, we're just being watched. We're just being watched by flies, It's like just documenting it. And we walk down the ocean or down the beach to go to the actual shelter area. And Kenzie was not doing so well. She had eaten some seaweed that was poisonous and didn't know it. And she almost ended up going off the show. She had like hives all over her body. She was sick. So for 2 days that I was there, she wasn't doing very well. And thank God. And it was, again, everything was meant to be. For the 2 days that I was there trying to recover, because I had just depleted all my energy. I could barely lift my arms from the swim. I mean, I hadn't eaten anything. And, you're eating minute calories for 18 days. And I just swam, across a mile of water or more. And so they fed me some of the food, some of the resources they had. And I helped Robbie. Go get water and boil water and gather firewood and keep fire going, because Kenzie was down. She was sick. It was very real in the sense that the medic was coming to check on her. And she had they weren't even pulling her off. I mean, they kind of let you take it as far as close to death as you wanted without letting you die. It was still kind of your choice, So she was throwing up. She needed a hospital, but it was still her choice, because the doctors were like, well, we don't think you're going to die. But the doctors even told her right there in front of us, like, we're on a show, but the doctors are looking at her, or the one Navy SEAL doctor goes, I think you need to get to a hospital, but it's your choice, girl. What do you want to do? And she wouldn't quit. She was like, nope, I'm not quitting. I'm staying. And so I was able to help Robbie for a couple of days. And if I'm honest, there's two sides to every story, but I told them my side. I told them that I found 2 guys that weren't cool. They weren't good. It wasn't fun living with them. It was difficult. I had no communication. I wasn't allowed to speak, basically. I mean, when I say that, it's like these 2 guys, they formed a brotherhood. They slept next to each other in a hut. They had formed a relationship. And I was just a tenant of the property, does that make sense? Like I was just a visitor. I wasn't part of them, and it was clear, and that's what it felt like. And they know that's what it felt like. And here I was, I found 2 people on day 1, and they just brought me in their home. They're like, oh, you're part of us, whatever you want, no judgment. You want to sleep all day. You want to help us. You do whatever you want, man. And that wasn't the case over there with these other 2 guys. It was like living in a boot camp. When the sun came up, it was like, you got to work, kid. You got to go hunt. You got to do things, It's like. So
you spent the rest of your time with them?
Nope.
You did go back?
I swam back.
Why did you swim back?
And everybody's going to wonder that. Everybody's going to ask that. And, and again, the show's done and gone. You can go watch it, but I'll tell you why. So in the shelter, Rich and Sawyer, the 2 guys, they found these fins, snorkel fins. There was only one island that had coconuts on it. It actually, for whatever reason, there was a bunch of coconuts on one island. Rich and Sawyer built a raft to go get coconuts, and they had got them. The only way to move around the raft and to actually physically get anything done, you need fins. It was damn near impossible to move around without fins. My mission was to go see what was there, and if I had the physical capability, was to go back. And this is where it gets super complex, in the sense that it was like Lord of the Flies. It was like Hunger Games. You were in it. It wasn't just a game at this point. At this point, everybody had committed. I mean, we're surviving. You have made this commitment to do this journey. And there was so many reasons. I went back because I said I would. I didn't even know it was, honest to God, I didn't even know it was called the word integrity necessarily. I just kept saying, it was like, because I said I would. And I have a reputation since I was a child of doing what I say I'm going to do, even if it's bad for me. If I tell you I'm going to do something, I'm going to do it, plain and simple. I told these guys that if I was able to, I was coming back. There was no way that I could enjoy. I found two people that I was happier with, but I couldn't enjoy the rest of my time sitting there knowing that I could swim back and didn't. How would I enjoy
Mm,
myself? How would I enjoy the experience? Here was the other thing. I didn't hate these guys. I didn't have hate. I just didn't love them. I didn't love these
yeah.
guys. They kept me alive, but I wanted them to go on their journey, and I wanted to go on the rest of my journey. And if I stayed with those, with Robbie and Kinsey, the two that I found, guess what? Rich and Sawyer were going to find a way to come over and be like, okay, Matt never came back. There must be something better over there. Or maybe he didn't make it. I wanted to close out that circle. I wanted to follow through, and I'm only as good as what I say, especially out there. I had nothing to offer.
But it's still very fascinating because you would think at this juncture, it's what, day 20, 21?
It was day 21.
Yeah, you'd be much more into survival mode where you have it's just you and your immediate environment and what you're still like living. You're in these dire conditions, still living on principles.
Yeah,
It's just pretty crazy and amazing.
And there was reasons for that. And one of the biggest reasons was because it was still who I was. My journey out there was to tell my story of the human being that I am. And if I did that, I would have much rather die. I would have been happy drowning in the water and letting the world know that is the human being I am, than survive to the end as an unhappy person.
Yeah.
I would have, let's say I made it to the end, I wouldn't have been happy. I wouldn't have been fulfilled, like my journey was to just be who I was. And in my life, that is who I am. If I tell you I'm coming back, then I'm going to freaking come back no matter what, even if it's not a good situation for me, I'm going to follow through.
Which then I think demarcation point that we do understand, right? It's a demarcation point that if you were not on a reality type show, you might have made different decisions, but the eyes were still on you. Like you still had to live past this, whether or not you live. Like your legacy of who you were,
right? And
still
I'm not
to survive this show. Like it's still,
and I'm not going to
make your parents proud, and you still,
right. And I'm not going to, that was the purpose of the show. And right. I'm not going to lie and tell people like, oh yeah, if I was in a jungle, if a plane crashed and we could live or die out there, that I'm going to swim back and forth across waters, like there is selfish reasons. I'll be completely honest about that. The selfish reasons were my journey out there. I made this commitment, and I couldn't live through the rest of this experience. This experiment is what it was, if I didn't follow through with what I said I would follow through with. I'll tell you this, in real life, if it would have been like shipwreck, we're out there living, the circumstances probably would have been different, as we would have been traveling together rather than me going on a solo mission. Or it would have been like, yo guys, I'm probably not going to come back, so let's make plans to, like, if I don't come back, we meet up. Let me tell you this, one of the big deciding factors of why I decided to swim back was selfishly, in the sense that I wanted to go back to finish my mission, to prove to them that I was worthy, that I did what I said I was going to do, and to shake their hands and say, I love you guys. Thank you for helping me get this far, whether it was ideal or not. And I'm going to go back to Robbie and Kinsey and help them, because I'm better help to them than I am to you guys. And I'm going to enjoy my time over there. That was what I knew in my mind was going to be what was going to happen. So I swim all the way back. It was easier. The swim was much easier. I had the fins. I made these webbed Aquaman gloves, which was like the smartest thing I did on the show. Like, I didn't do a lot of really brilliant things, but I did that. I found gloves in Kinsey's bag, and we had this tiny, tiny roll of duct tape that was like in somebody's bag. And I took the duct tape and I made webbed gloves, and everybody was like, that's brilliant. And that was what helped me with the swim. So I laid on my back so I could float, and then I would just use my arms to do a backstroke. And then if my arms got tired, I would kick. When my legs got tired, I would use my arms. And I just came up with that on my own. And that was my way. And I made it back it was still like a 40-minute freaking swim across this mile of water, but I made it back in decent time. I was able to learn the tide a little bit better and stuff. And I get back to Rich and Sawyer, to the two dudes. I get back to the two bros. and they were happy to see me. They were proud. They were like, man, we didn't think you were coming back. That says a lot about you. And I did earn their respect. They were like, wow, this guy is the real deal. We judged him that he, wasn't doing much to help. And this guy, followed through with what he said. But then I looked at them and said, okay, guys, here's the deal. You guys are competent survivalists. I'm not. You're going to survive with or without me. If anything, I'm slowing you guys down at this point. You guys are sharing food with me and stuff. Let me take the fins. Let me take the raft. Let me take some belongings, some of Kinsey's items that she wanted. Let me offer some things to Robbie and Kinsey on the other island. So I'm not just going there naked in my underwear saying, hey, help me survive the rest of this journey. I wanted to be useful, right? So I had learned how to find these clams. That was kind of my thing. And that's what helped us survive. So I had that to my credit. I had Kinsey's bag. All Kinsey wanted was like the photos of her family and her journal. She didn't even want clothing. She didn't even want her belongings. She was like, screw it. They can keep my stuff. I just want my photos of my family. I mean, it was emotional out there, So I went to Rich and Sawyer and I said, guys, let's go do a coconut run. Let's get you stocked up on coconuts. We'll do it together. You'll be good. And then let me use the resources to go back to to Robbie and Kinsey and go our separate ways. And they told me no. Straight up.
So I expected that they would have said no. Quick question. What was the prize? Like, what did you get at the end of this?
We didn't really know. Production actually, because they didn't want it to be about money, so they kind of were very vague on it. At first it was kind of like, hey, it's not a lot of money. They even said it this way. It's not life-changing money. You'll be compensated. You'll be compensated for your time, but it's less than $250,000. It's less than $200,000. It's less than $150,000. So you know what I'm saying? They kept they didn't want you to know a number, because they didn't want it to be about the money.
I was just wondering if there's something that these guys thought they were playing for, and then
$100,000. Yeah. So that's why
I'm just, because we've been talking for a while, and I want to find out, Matt. You're in Las Vegas. We're gonna have to finish this conversation in person. Yeah. But I'm like, because I have so many questions. Because if it boiled down to those two dudes, like, how would they?
The problem was, and they found it in the end in a very emotional, upsetting way. It smacked them in the face pretty hard. They were there for the game. So listen, Ann, there wasn't a competition. It wasn't you get $100,000 if you win. There was no winning. If you make it to the end of the show, everybody gets paid.
Okay, everybody. Okay, so it was not meant. Okay, and they were just in a competitive mindset. They was not set up that way.
They were just in it for the victory. They were in it for the money, but they were in it for the money for the right reasons. And this is why I didn't hate them. They had wives and children at home. They wanted to go home to their wives and kids as heroes, as victory, as victorious men, and with money in their pockets. And that took over humanity. So what's really scary and sad, and they realized it, is whether they wanted to admit it or not, they lost humanity. Yeah. They got so tunnel vision. They got so close, so narrow-minded, so small-minded on the exit point, on the game, that they missed the bigger picture of why we were there. Yeah. The whole emotional side, the spiritual side, the awakening side of what the journey was really about. Production knew what it was about, but these guys missed it.
And what would have made them heroes would have positively, represented them to the world, and being part of a team, being part of helping, being part of being like, and it's just crazy that it was two of them, and the fact that they found each other probably created. If only one come across you, that probably would have been different. But you have two that have the same mindset, and you have the group mindset going, and it's
and there's so much to defend on. Also, that I have to be real about. Like, in their defense, if I would have found one of them first, if I would have gone off on day 1, 2, 3, 4 rather than waiting on day 8, if I would have found these guys early, I honestly think I would have formed a better brotherhood with them. I do believe that they had just locked in, and then they buried their roots, and like, we're gonna make it to the end, and like I said, they lost the bigger picture of what of what production wanted you to realize. Production wanted people to have this awe-inspiring breakthrough of life, and they wanted it to change people's lives. And these guys, they
Yeah.
figured it out in the end, but it came very late for them,
But it's more of like what the opportunity of the situation that you're in. I mean, because it translates to what we're going through right now with the pandemic, with the coronavirus, of being locked in, and it's like, what are the opportunities for you, your family, your loved ones in this moment, in this situation, instead of people, everything that life offers you opportunities, but it's up to you to capture what it is, to explore what it is, to grow through that moment in time. And it's just, and when you don't and you miss it, you like, it's not like you can't rewind, you can't like the last month, you will never relive the last month that we just went through. Even if the lockdown, it doesn't matter. Like, the last month was the last month. It shaped you. You became a certain person. And that is the person now you're moving forward being.
Yeah.
Like, that experience, because that's the other part I want to get to. So, how, so I'm gonna fast forward. So you're like near death, right? How, like, did you have lasting damage from it, or how long did it take you to actually like fully recover?
No, what's actually kind of amazing and actually even emotional about the human body was I came home healthier. Like, my doctor did my blood work and she was like, Matt, you were one of the healthiest human beings in my 25 years of practice. And I always felt very proud. I'm an athlete, my body is everything. I train, I take extremely good care of myself. And when I first met this woman who's an MD and a naturopath, she did all my blood work. She's, and she was like, you are one of the healthiest human beings I've ever had as a patient. She goes, just keep doing what you're doing. When I came home and had all my blood work done to make sure I didn't have viruses and, what my blood levels were, kidney levels, any damage that was done to my body, my kidneys and liver were stressed, rightfully, obviously. And then after a few weeks after I recovered, my body was so purged that my numbers were perfect. And honestly, I hate to know, everybody would argue about it. It's like, it's not some kind of conspiracy theory. It's just real life science. My body was purged. I was surviving off of the jungle for 41 days, and my body was healthier. My blood, my numbers, everything was the healthiest that I've ever been, because my body completely reset. And it goes to show you how sad the world is that we live in, as far as the anywhere from the air quality to the food quality to the preservatives to the things that we put in our body, how bad our processed foods are and everything. My stomach, was working more perfectly than it ever has in its entire life, out in the middle of a jungle. And all I was living on was coconut and shellfish every single day. And it was a wake up call of like, oh, wow, the food that we have and the food that we put in our bodies and the way we treat our bodies, even when you think you're healthy, isn't all that healthy, So, I was actually healthier than ever before.
Oh, wow. Didn't see that coming.
Yeah.
So what was readjusting to life? Like, how's this you coming back, who clearly you're clear in who you are, what you stand for, why you do what you do, and you get reintegrated into life and the busyness of it and the requirement on your time? Like, how intense was that?
It wasn't even too intense, and you just hit something. That is something I still struggle with today, more than 2 years later. There's not almost a day that goes by that I don't think about the journey. I don't think about the jungle. There's almost not a day. It was so traumatizing in a great way also, that, people always associate PTSD with negative. It doesn't always have to be negative. It's like, I still have PTSD from that experience that I hope I never get over, because when I came home, how I try to explain it to people is I have a new set of tools. I not just a new set of tools. I was given this whole badass toolbox of resources, of tools, of how to deal with and how to process things that I never knew how to deal with before. The biggest problem and the biggest struggle I had coming home, believe it or not, Anne, was just getting sucked back into normal life. It wasn't going through the trauma of starving or living in a jungle. My biggest trauma was going back to the human being I was before the journey. And that has still been my biggest struggle, is not going back to the same human being I was and trying to hold on to what I was and what I did and what I experienced and the human being I was when I got home. It was very emotional to have my mother, my brother, my father, my best friend, my ex-girlfriend, who's a good friend, look at me in the eye with emotions and say, you're a different person. You are completely different. You don't speak the same. You don't talk the same. You don't look the same. And in a great way. I had my best friends or closer to me than most family, who reached out to me and said, man, it's emotional to watch you talk when I do video journals, because they're like, you are a totally different human being, and I'm losing that a little bit. You have no choice. You're product of your environment. We don't live in a jungle, or we live in an urban jungle, and you have to adapt, and you have to adapt to that world. So my most desperate thing that hurts every day, even right now, talking to you about it, is just holding on to that person I was. And thank God, the reason I video journal, and people don't realize I video journal for myself. I don't care if anybody else watches them. I video journal to share, and hopefully it helps other human beings, but primarily so I can look back on videos and be like, okay, that's where my mind was. That's how I spoke, to try to better hold on to that, if that makes sense,
So, as you're talking, I do a lot of traveling, and traveling does that for me. Be a different person. And I spent 3 months across Canada. I was just hiking, mountain biking, kayaking, camping. It was incredible. And I remember when I got back, I'm across back in the US, and I'm like, I don't want to. Like, there's it's not just a memory time, but it's that person that I am. I'm living on the road. Like, she's in the moment, it's like, it's different things that matter. And I'm like, I don't, I want to hang on to that person.
Yeah.
But you have to go back, to life. And and then you have moments where you act a certain way, and you're like, no, this is not who I want to be. How do I get, how is it that this happens again, that we morph back into, a former version of ourselves that we don't want to be, because of the environment that we're in, and the pressures and all that stuff. So what things do you do to stay in touch with that person that you want to be?
Video journaling, which I don't do enough. Sharing my thoughts, trying to journal, or at least look back at my journal. And honestly, I don't even know the word for it. I probably need to see a psychiatrist to decipher what that is. But sometimes I grab my journal that I wrote in, and I'm afraid to read it. I'm afraid I don't know. And I don't honestly have the answers why, because I don't know, multiple emotions, because I think part of it, if I had to try to get down to it, is I don't want to further see how far away I've, does that make sense? I don't want to read about how much further away I've become from what I want to still be. I guess I'm just chicken shit, like, I just don't want to see, the growth and the positivity that I had, and that I'm not there right now. And so I constantly try to just remember of how I was, and try to, as hard as it is for me to do, like this whole shutdown makes me laugh. As much as I'm angry, everybody has their different viewpoints politically, whatever. I'm not happy about what's going on right now, as a lot of people are. I'm devastated by it. I'm devastated. I'm scared of what our world's going to look like after this. But I do take some solace in the sense of, this is nothing compared to what I've been through. It's like, I actually get guilt. I truly, honest to God, get guilt when I know that there's human beings out there struggling emotionally. Suicide rates are up. I had a friend, a very good friend, a skydiver, who killed himself. And part of it was because of this whole shutdown. He was traveling, and too many extremes. Then he came home to lockdown and was alone. And we all think that had something to do with it. It's like, and I get guilty because of what I went through, I was more segregated when I was with two human beings than I was when I was alone. So I have no problem being alone. I don't, you know, we all have moments of depression. Every human being gets depressed. Anybody who's somewhat, you know, dynamic in the mind, at least, you know, ignorance is bliss, right? So unless you're completely oblivious to everything in the world, most people suffer some type of depression throughout their lives and moments. And so, yeah, I deal with depression like any other human being at times. But being alone is no problem for me, you know, and so, yeah, during the shutdown, I get upset, I miss people and I want to do things, but I'm a different type of human being. I get more worried and more concerned and more sad for other people because I know what they're going through is probably a lot worse than what I'm going through. I've always liked to consider it's something I love about myself is that I'm a very emotionally aware person. And now that I just said that, I definitely want to talk about something I said very emotionally and I wrote and I journaled about, and I said was that when I started the journey, when I started the show, Anne, I did not love myself 100%. I did not love myself. I was not happy with myself. I felt like I let my family down with my motorsports career, with, you know, my family was devastated by the economic collapse in 2008. We clawed for 8 years to come back from, almost 10 years to come back from it. And I just was not proud of myself. I desperately worked for other people to be proud of me because of the environment I was in, being a race car driver, you know, you always had to be, no matter what race you won, it was just like, okay, great. We don't care.
You're only as good as last race.
You're only
that
as
type
good
of
as,
thing.
yeah, you weren't even as good as your damn last race. You're only as good as the next race that you hadn't even won. You know, it's like, it was just this never ending psychotic treadmill in the motorsports world of trying to become a you know, a Formula One star of what I thought I was on my way to become. And you're just on this rat race, this terrible treadmill as a teenager, you know, just the most insane pressure. I didn't love myself 100%. I wanted other people to be proud of me, but I was not proud of myself. And I learned that out there. Not only did I learn that I wasn't proud of myself and that I didn't love myself, I learned to love myself and be proud of what I've done in my life. And and right now, talking to you, doing what you're allowing me to do right now, you asked me, how do I stay that person? Is sharing my story and going back through the motions and remembering, man, that is why I went through that, was to remember to love yourself and be proud of the things that you've done in your life. And that was one of the utmost biggest things that I learned out there.
Oh, well, that is incredible. But I have to say too, as you shared your story, so having started the broadcast, it's been interesting. You know, of all the guests I've had so far, you have allowed yourself to be the most vulnerable, you know, to be the most honest, to really let your emotions show. And that's, you know, high selfness, high emotional intelligence. Also, what you said, you know, I think it comes from having gone through all of that, letting go of other people's expectation of what is right, what is wrong, what's the world going to think, and just being you and being able to express who you are, unashamed of, you know, what that means and what that says. And, you know, that's where like the true power of human connection, it's this way, or those who are watching on Facebook or those who are going to listen to this later on, you know, they're going to make that connection because you are being vulnerable. And so many people are afraid to do that, to just let it down, just be who they need to be, just be human. And that's what the world needs more than anything else when we're going through a time like this. And it seems like you have a part of the society that wants to go that way, and you have one that's still completely detached from
Completely
feeling
oblivious.
empathy. Yeah, being oblivious, feeling empathy for what other people might be going through, and just being real, just being human, you know, with one another, which is what we need more than anything. And so, like, for me, I think we don't go back to normal. It's it whatever normal exists for this is gone.
Yeah.
So, you know, it's writing what the new normal is and making the right decisions, you know, and shaping that, because it's going to continue to shift. So yeah, and I think
yeah,
go ahead.
you echo exactly what I've said. As much as I'm in an angry phase, you know, like I'm going through grief, like everybody is in the world right now. You know, people are going through far more grief than myself. People have lost family members because of this, and in multiple ways, not just because of coronavirus. They've lost family members because of other reasons, and there's going to be a fallout from this when the economy eventually is collapsing, and there's going to be a whole round of different deaths to come, unfortunately. So I'm scared of that. So, but I want you to know, again, the awareness that I have is I'm angry, I'm afraid, I'm scared of what the new normal is going to be. But I also, at that same breath, there's going to be a lot of amazing things that come out of all of this destruction. Things are going to change. Human beings are going to change. Whether or not it's going to change the future for all living generations, I do believe there's going to be a lot of good, important things that come out of this that people learn. It is so devastating. Again, you just said it, and you weren't in a jungle, but you were obviously aware of it because of the life experiences that you've gone through. In a world where we're so connected, human beings are the most disconnected things on the planet. They are so disconnected from other human beings, from connection, from awareness, from emotional awareness. We are so disconnected as a species, yet we're so connected, digitally. And I learned that I wasn't trying to sound cliche or something super spiritual. It was just truly what I learned. As soon as I was cut off from the world, I became more connected than ever before. I became more connected to myself, to my family. I became more connected to the world. I became even more aware as soon as I unplugged, and it sounds cliche to say that, but that was just the truth. As soon as I was ripped away from the world as we know it, I became more connected. And again, being back connected to the world is what disconnects me from the things that I learned. And that's what I try to hold on to. And it's weird, and I don't expect people to be able to understand that. So all we can hope is that this experience teaches those human beings what's important, and being more connected.
Yeah, and the true first step is to connect with yourself. Like, the one person people avoid the most is themselves.
Yeah.
And that's not living. Like, you'll never fully grasp what life has to offer when you're constantly running away from who you are and yourself, because you have to face up to that, to the change. I mean, I just know, my life journey, what I've gone through, when things really started to change, when I really began to change. And it's a work in progress. And like we already said, there are times where I really let myself down.
Yeah.
And I'm just like, I thought I was done being this person. Why? Where do you come from? So
you just made a good point. Something I try to explain: when I was out there in the jungle, sleeping at night, at night in the dark, and you don't have anything but your thoughts. It felt like this at times. It felt like you were, like you couldn't avoid it. It was just like just waves crashing in on you, and there was nothing you could do to avoid it, which ended up being a beautiful thing. Is when you're alone, you have nothing other than your thoughts, and you have nothing other than to deal with yourself. And if you're willing to accept it, it's emotional, it's difficult, but it's a beautiful thing, because you have nowhere else to go. You can't escape your thoughts, and people need that. People purposely avoid themselves, like you just said. I was avoiding myself before all this, before I did that experience, and it allowed me to understand, how to be alone and how to deal with yourself.
Yeah. So my mission, what I want to accomplish this lifetime, is raise human potential within this lifetime. It's kind of a big mission that I've set for myself, but and part of that is, the first step is self-awareness, to put everybody in touch, with themselves and who they are. And going on an adventure, on their journey, is key to making that happen. And it doesn't have to be extreme like what you did, but it's
at least
entering,
even just traveling.
Exactly. Traveling, or I mean, that's the exposure of new things and new experiences. It will set you off on a journey to reflect, and to be in the moment, to think about what's happening and to capture it. And there are certain simple key things that you can do that is going to get to the result that, the amazing things that you've done, that you're trying to stay connected with. So we have talked for almost 2 hours.
That's amazing. Unbelievable, right?
Sorry
for anybody watching.
And I have so many other questions options because I want to find out what happened to those dudes. So
Yeah.
again, we need once we're allowed to have coffee again, I would love to link up with you because I need to fill in some of the blanks in your stories that
I'm
I
happy to
have.
do that.
Yeah. So usually I play the first time lightning round with people. Do you have time to play
Sure.
that real quick?
Sure. What is
All
it?
right. So I'm going to throw out some options to you for times. So if you've done it before, you would swipe up if you're on the app. If you've never done it, not interested, it's left. And if you have done it, then if you haven't done it, would like to add it, then it's right.
I
Up,
get it.
done. Okay.
Yep.
So ride in a hovercraft.
Oh, so up means I want to, right?
Right.
Right. I thought right means up means you've done it. Right means
Yeah.
you want to. Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, for sure.
For sure.
I want to
All
try it.
right. Play water polo.
Want to try
Right.
it. Yeah, right.
Okay. Go ice climbing.
Right swipe.
All right. I figured you would have done that for some
I've
reason.
never done that. Yeah.
All right. Go mudding.
Yeah, of course. I've done that. Yep. Up.
You've done that. All right. What was your first mudding experience like?
Oh, I had truck. My dad bought me a nice truck when I was a kid, but like I said, I've been I was a motocross racer at the age of 5. So, first mudding experience, I was just a kid.
Oh, I was thinking I was like a spa mudding.
Oh, I thought you meant like off-road mudding, a spa mudding. I would definitely try it for sure. I'm definitely I'm a metrosexual kind of guy. Like, I'll go get a pedicure. I'm not afraid.
All right. So mudding.
I'm all about taking care of my body.
No shame in that. All right. Find a 4-leaf clover.
I've done that.
You've done that.
And my first experience, I was in elementary school here in Las Vegas, and of course the kids were always talking about it, and we would scour the yard and the playground to find 4-leaf clovers, and I found one. Yeah.
Oh, see, I have scoured and I've never found one.
I have found one before.
All right. Write a song.
Oh man, I would love. Yeah, I would love to try that. I have such a huge respect for music. One of the biggest things I wish I had was musical talent or ability. So I love listening to music. People hear it, but they don't listen to it. I get upset. I usually get irritated when people. I'm like, do you know what that song's about? Do you know what they're talking about? So whenever I hear a song that touches me, I actually research. I'll go Google what are they talking about. I'll watch the music video. I usually see a music video and get super disappointed to the words. I'm like, oh, you could have done something so much more creative than this video. So yeah, I would love to write a song.
All right, awesome. Assemble furniture.
Oh yeah, I've done too much of that. Yep.
Do day trading.
I would love to do that. I've tried. Again, I hate being uneducated, and so trading is something I think is a valuable knowledge, and so I look into it. I hate how complicated it is, just because I'm not smart enough to understand it. So it's something I've dabbled in, and I would like to get smarter. I'm always constantly poking and asking people to like mentor me about it. So yeah, something I'm very intrigued by. Actually, It's very intriguing to me.
Awesome. Yeah, I met a guy who was traveling through South America, and that's the way he was funding his travel. He was
Cool.
day trading, and I was like, huh.
Yeah, it's a little bit of gambling to me, but it's obviously it's calculated games. It's like playing poker. Sure, there's an element of luck involved, but if you have the knowledge and the skill set and the research, it can be for sure.
And it can offer you some freedom.
Yep.
All right, a bridge.
What is it?
Bridge. The game of bridge, the card game.
Oh, bridge. Yeah, I think my mom used to, taught me how to play like rummy when I was a kid. So yeah, I think I've played. I honestly say when I was younger, like I don't even remember how to play rummy anymore. I used to be a really big card player with my mom. I was really good at it. But yeah, we've played that. She taught me how to play that a long time ago. I wouldn't remember how to play anymore, but I have played it before.
Yeah, I played it. All right. Use an air fryer.
Yeah, I used one for Thanksgiving, not just a couple years ago actually, and it was amazing. It actually turned out really good.
Good turkey.
It was.
It was turkey.
Everybody was super blown away. Actually, it turned out amazing.
All right. Well, that is it for the first time lightning round.
Awesome.
And actually, one more question. Today's prompt. Today's prompt is the first time you cheated.
First time I cheated.
Yep, at anything.
I'm almost positive I remember when it was. I was in private school, and I think I was in like 6th grade, and I wasn't the best student. I wasn't super smart, like I was very streetwise. I was very articulate and precocious, but I wasn't very book smart at all. And maybe ADD at the time. I don't know. I was terrible at it. And I remember cheating on a test in a private school and being terrified because but I couldn't fall behind. And again, what's funny is reflecting back, it wasn't even so easy. It wasn't even that I just wanted to make it cheat. I was actually not happy about cheating, but I didn't want to fall behind. And even when I was cheating, I wanted to know the answer. I didn't just want, oh, just give me the A, B, or C.
Yeah.
I wanted to know why. But I do remember, actually, I'm a pretty dynamic person. I remember cheating because it was so upsetting to me that I was angry that I had to, that I didn't have the knowledge, that I was just frustrated. I wasn't just like, oh, give me the answers, but I remember that now that you even asked me that, because I think I even remember, like, I could even remember in the classroom of the old school of like what it was. And yeah, it was a math test.
Wow. Yeah. So my first time cheating was with a Rubik's square, and similar situation. I was really young, and it just bothered me that I couldn't solve it. Like, I'm still like that as an adult when I do something and I can't figure it out, and I'm like, son of a, why? Like, I know
Yeah.
I can figure this out. So I started taking the stickers off to move them to get them to match. And of course, they wouldn't stick, and I ruined the Rubik's square. And to this day, I still haven't done one. So I think I'm going to order one online.
That's
To try
amazing.
and
Move the stickers to make there. It's done. I figured it out. That's actually kind of amazing, actually.
I'm going to be smarter in this
I
stupid
didn't even.
thing.
I don't even think I thought of that. Like, yeah, I figured it out. Just put the stickers where I need to put them. Nobody said I had to move it around to make it fit.
Yeah. Nobody gave me the rules.
That's brilliant.
Yeah, but I ended up ruining it. So my uncle wasn't he wasn't like super upset, but he was like, yeah, that's not how you do this.
That's awesome, though. I've
Very well
heard
then.
somebody doing that. That's cool.
All right, Matt. Thank you so much for all your time today, and just incredible story. And
Thank
again,
you.
for being vulnerable, for being open, for sharing, means a lot to me.
And more importantly, honestly, and I truly mean this, thank you for doing what you're doing to allow people to do that. So it makes a difference.
Oh, thank you.